to be here. It's always fun to do this stuff with you, Richard. So.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. So I know last time you were on stage, you shared a bit of your story, but if you want to introduce yourself just a little bit, and I'll just start jumping into the questions after that.
Sure. I grew up in Brooklyn, family immigrants. My dad drove Pepsi-Cola truck. My mom worked for the Department of Social Services. I was supposed to get a civil service job and retire at 65 with a pension and all of that, but for whatever reason, I didn't follow that path. I ended up getting into the cable business before anybody knew what cable TV was. Actually, here in New York, I was in Manhattan splicing the cables under the streets for $90 a week. But I realized where things were going, and I ended up building a big cable system out in Los Angeles. And, as a Brooklyn kid, you go out to LA, everybody's going to parties and premieres and all that stuff. So I decided I needed to get into that, so I get invited to the parties and premieres. So I started a TV network called E! Entertainment Television, which, to me seemed logical. It's people around the world love Hollywood gossip. I mean, we did pretty good with Howard Stern and Kardashians and stuff like that. And today, everybody talks about influencers, and there's no bigger influencer of pop culture in the world than E! On any given day, we reach more. If you took all the influencers of pop culture in the world and you added up who they reach, we reach more people on any given day. And the company went from, the VCs love us because they gave us $2 million to start a TV network, which was supposedly impossible, and the company's up around $5.2 billion now. So that's me.
Awesome. Yeah, congrats on that huge story. I think everyone's heard of eChannel. So one thing that I wanted to point out is that we have, the last time Larry was on stage, we have that on billionaires.com. You can stream that if you want. We're going to ask completely different questions today. But I do want to highlight that what struck me and what I still remember from the last interview was that you had a real focus on and a strategy around working smart and not working yourself to death 14 hours a day. Some people like Ariana Huffington say, hey, don't work yourself to death. You have to be balanced. But that's after she worked herself to death for 20 years and passed out and broke her jaw on a desk. And you wonder if she only became wealthy because she did work herself to death for 20 years. So can you comment on that and how you worked smart, not ridiculously hard, although I'm sure you worked hard sometimes?
Yeah, no, sometimes I do. But number one, I just hire the smartest people I could find. So typically when I interview for something, whatever that specific task is, I make sure the person I hire is actually smarter than me in that task, but I know how to manage them. But other than that, I go to gym an hour a day, 6 days a week, because I see my friends that I went to school with walking with canes and walkers and stuff like that, and I don't want to go that way. And I'm actually finally writing the book. People have been after me to write the book, but I'm writing the book with kind of the parts of my life, but it's going to be a cookbook. So it's going to be the recipes that I learned to cook during the various phases, because I love cooking. And 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock every day, no matter what I'm doing, I go in the kitchen and I cook myself dinner, or I cook friends dinner and stuff. And it's just it's a replacement for having to go into therapy. So I make sure I take that alone time every day. The other thing I do, which a lot of people don't do, and entrepreneurs, is I literally look at all the things that I'm working on every single night, and I self-assess. So these things that I should be working on again tomorrow. Most of the time they're not. Most of the time I go, boy, I had that idea in the morning. Boy, was that dopey, and I get rid of it real quick. Where a lot of entrepreneurs just get stuck in this follow your passion thing. And the world changes, the environment changes, maybe it wasn't such a good idea, and they spend all their time working on stuff that's not going to work, as opposed to just putting the ego aside and going, okay, bad idea, next.
Awesome, thank you. So lots of times we hear, oh, you have to hire really smart people. So you've probably learned some tricks and strategies to that. If you want to find someone smarter than you are in a niche, do you have like a go-to strategy or tactic you could share with the room?
Sure. We kind of self-develop a lot of people. We take in interns, and one of the things people don't realize with E, when we started E, the going number to start a TV network, back then was around $100 million, and it was only done by big corporations. We actually found someone to give us $2 million, and we didn't know that wasn't enough, so we just did it anyway. But he actually started with 11 employees and 31 interns. I had a friend teaching radio, television, film in University of Texas in Austin, and he just sent me 31 interns, and they came for the summer, but as soon as we went on the air, we just grew so fast that, half of those kids became vice presidents by the end of the summer. And my friend never forgave me for not sending the kids back to Texas. But we give people, I still love interns. I bring in interns early. We take the best of the interns and we give them kind of lower level jobs, and then we take the best of those and stuff. So basically we get really smart kids. In the business that I'm in, I have to understand the way people are using TikToks and YouTubes and all of that stuff. So I hire people that live that world. And we've done well. Just some interesting stuff. 80% of our company is female. And it's not based on any given thing. It's just we hire smart people that we feel we could get along with, and that's kind of the way it's been.
Awesome. So I want to back up a minute to when you talked about looking at things at nighttime and discarding projects that are not a good use of your time. So basically what you're saying is like some things that got a yes from you, after you get into it, you're like, nah, this is actually a no, and you get it quickly off your plate. What other time management or mindset, success rituals could you share with the room?
Well, again, I'm very much against this, follow your passion thing. I just see so many people go, spend so much time on stuff. And, I owned a domain name called television.com. And I thought it was like the smartest, it was like amazing. I'm going to do it with it. And I launched it. And when we launched it, it was $25 per 1,000 users that we got from advertisers. And then the market crashed and it went to 25 cents. So the more people that used it, the more money we lost. And we couldn't figure out. So it really learned me to pay attention to the environment, to the technology, and really think about where things are going. And again, put your ego aside and go, it sounded good, things changed, what's next?
Got it. Awesome. So if you want to get past gatekeepers for billion-dollar-plus net worth people, for publicly traded companies, powerful partners, celebrities, what's your suggestion for actually getting their attention and making like a meaningful relationship or actually getting something done?
We use a whole bunch of things. I'm doing just a side story. I have a big company in China. I think we're still the only Western media company that's legally allowed to operate in China. We do film, television, stuff for brands, and all of that stuff. But when COVID came, I started doing stuff here in the U.S. again. So I call this era of my life, it's my Kardashians Repentance Tour. And I apologize to everybody for unleashing them on the world, but they've done quite well. But I'm doing, I hear, in these things, people talk about impact investing and social good and stuff. All I can say to all you folks is you just got to start putting your money where your mouth is. Everybody talks about it and very few people do it. Everybody still looks at, it's the only consideration I see is the bottom line. Well, we're doing stuff now. I'm doing a show called Conscious Parenting. It's all about being a parent in this crazy world. We're doing another one called Uncanceled, which is all about the craziness of cancel culture and how it's swung too far. We're doing, I got a nighttime talk show with a woman host, and the way we pitched that was kind of interesting. I go to the TV networks and I go, hey, how many women do you have in late night TV? And they go, 0. I go, yeah. And I brought in John Leguizamo's production company, John the comedian from the Bronx. And then after that I go, well, how many Hispanic production companies do you got? And they go, I can help you on that one, 0. So basically what we do, we analyze where we're going to go in to pitch, and we make sure we check off the boxes before we go in and pitch it.
Great. We were just talking about next-gen strategies, and you brought up the parenting show. Are there any insights you've gotten from that already, or any main point you're trying to get across via the show that you want to share with the audience?
Well, when you look at when I was at first, when there's a woman who does all the TED Talks on parenting and stuff. When I was a kid, the slogan was, children should be seen and not heard. Today, it's kids are human beings. You got to start treating them like that. So I really begun to dig into it. And when I was born, my grandmother lived upstairs. My aunt lived next door. My mother had the proverbial village. Today, kids go away to school. You have the baby in the morning. They hand it to you in the afternoon, and you have nothing. But now you have school bullying, you have bullying, school shootings, you have gender identification issues. It's become incredibly hard to become a parent. I mean, and then you get to the issue of teaching your kids about money. And it's another show we're doing on financial wellness for millennials, because my daughter came to me and said she was getting married. Hey, Dad, what's a prenup? I'm going, how do you not know what a prenup is? Don't they teach you anything in school? And the answer is no, they don't teach them anything in school. So, I sent to the family lawyer. She came back. She goes, okay, now I understand what it is. But how do I explain this to AJ, her soon-to-be husband, without him thinking that I'm not doing this forever? So I realized how much emotion. It's more than half of the divorces in the U.S. are somehow related to money. So that's kind of where we're focusing our programming efforts is, yes, we're going to make money on all these shows, but there has to be a component in it where we say, you know what, we're actually doing something good.
Great, got it. So just like dealing with next gen for the first time, many people in this room have gone through an exit or are preparing to, or their goal is to. Do you have any insights or lessons learned from your exit that, now you've gone through it, like you wish that someone would have told you through a fireside chat sometime, like that you should have done X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, I mean, number one, I've surrounded myself with people who really know money a lot better than I do. And the way we've done it is they manage 90% of what I have, and then they give me 10% to play with, because sometimes I do really dopey things. Things like, the ones that don't work are the greatest lessons. When in California they mandated you have to have an electric car by 2030 or something, I said, I'm going to invest in the people who make the charging things. Yeah, I've lost 60% of the money on that one. And stuff. And, the people who take care of the stuff for me, they just look at me and they laugh and go, have a good time. So you got to surround yourself with really, really smart people in whatever you're going to invest in. My guys have been returning, somewhere between 7 and 8% a year consistently. And, when the internet boom, all these booms came, crypto, everybody goes, oh, you should put money in Bitcoin and you should put money in that. My guys have just stayed the course. We do 7, 8% a year without fail. I go to sleep at night. I don't worry. So, but with my kids, it's actually interesting. Again, I grew up in a pretty strict family and stuff, and we learned to be humble about a lot of stuff. And with my kids, one of the rules is you're never allowed to invoke the name of your father when you're trying to get something. And my son violated it, where he was trying to get in someplace and they wouldn't let him in. And of course, we were watching this on FaceTime or whatever it was, and he did do you know who my father is? Well, for 5 years, he was banned from using his last name. So he had to go from Johnny Namer, he's now Johnny Vegas, and he's still going through the penalty.
That's a good next gen tip. Awesome. So you were able to scale eChannel massively. I think there's some people here in the room that have successful businesses, or they wouldn't be able to come to this event, but they haven't been able to scale it massively. Do you have any tips and strategies? I'm sure you have friends that had decent businesses but never could really scale it. What's your secret to that? What tips and strategies do you have?
Sure. Well, we become a world that's being driven by visual content. One of the things that we've been doing, we consult now to people in every industry, because there's no single place where you don't need visual content. If you're not doing YouTubes and TikToks and all that kind of stuff, you're leaving a lot on the table. So we actually consult to those people, and most of it outside of the media world, where we do. If it's in the media world, we'll do it ourselves. But if it's outside the media world, we will consult the people on that. Artificial intelligence, if you don't know how to prompt, learn it. It's going to be, everybody talks about computer programming and stuff like that. Well, I could take my artificial intelligence programs and I don't have to know how to code or anything. It does it for me. I just know I have to know how to ask it the right questions. Artificial intelligence, if put to good use, is amazing. I think our politicians need to catch up to it because there's no rules and regulations for it now. But to me, that's where the world is going. So.
Great. And I know with eChannel, you were able to get access to movie trailers and stars at pretty much no cost, and it was highly produced content. And so that seemed to be one part that was key to your ability to scale eChannel. Was there anything else, like 2 or 3 components to the recipe that made it go off?
Sure. We some of the stuff we did, which turned out to be really smart. We realized that Hollywood has stopped being a geographic place. It's really become a mindset, a level of quality and creativity and stuff. So we really concentrated on the entertainment, not just in the U.S., but outside the U.S. He is now in 142 countries. I personally, did a lot of that building, but I went off. I had the #1 TV show in Russia for 10 years, 5 days a week. And I had to learn Russian in order to do it. Now I have a company in China. I produce only in Mandarin language, and you got to realize that not just this technology changed, but the geography changed. When I started in the business, I'd do a business plan. I would weight the financials 95% U.S. and 5% other. I mean, you didn't even give it a name. Now it's 30% U.S. So you really need to pay attention to, Russia and China and South America and, all those kind of places. Again, Hollywood is a mindset. It's not a geographic play. I can make movies anywhere, and I can make them on my iPhone.
Great. Any mistakes that you could share so others could avoid, either while scaling your company, managing a lot of employees, going through an exit? Any pitfalls to avoid?
Sure. Again, it's spending too much time on things that are not going to happen, and really not paying attention to changes or inevitable changes in technology. Again, with AI, everybody's trying to build their businesses on what AI is today, which is a huge mistake. You really need to get a futurist in and say, here's where it's possibly going to be going, and then plan for that. And you want to be there before the big guys. I mean, and that's one of the things we've been able to do is, people look at me, they go, how'd you get in China? I said, because I analyzed why Rupert Murdoch failed in China. And that's because he went in and said, here's what I do in Australia, and I'll subtitle it in Mandarin for you. And the Chinese just laughed at him and, tossed them out. And they let us in. And we're really very mindful. I liken, my time in China as being in my mother's house, where my mother would always tell me, if you don't like the rules, go somewhere else. And that's kind of the way we deal with other markets.
Great. What would you say is unique about working with celebrities in film or entertainment that's not obvious or counterintuitive?
Well, I mean, the egos are, off the charts. We try and work with people who, can tone that down and realize that there's a business. I mean, everybody looks at the Kardashians now and they do it. I mean, those girls are worth $4 or $5 billion now. What you see on television is a TV show. People kind of mistake it. They go, oh, this is the way they really are. And you look at people like Kim, she's involved in, criminal law reform and stuff like that. So there's a lot of giving back and stuff, but it doesn't make good television, so that's not what you see.
Right, makes sense. So I know the founders of Home Depot, they planned to have 1,000 stores when they first got started, and it's always hard to predict where a company is going to go, like eChannel. But did you have a vision of creating something pretty big from the beginning, or did it just start small and then grew a little bit larger and then just kind of took on a life of its own, or was it a grand vision you had?
No, it certainly wasn't a vision. I was building this cable system in Los Angeles, and the company I worked for was from Toronto, and they sold and said, oh, come back to Toronto. And I go, no. I didn't go from New York to LA to go to Toronto. I'm not doing that. So I said, let me think of something. It was, early days of cable, and I always had trouble getting into all these parties and premieres, and I would go to the PR people at the studios and say, the best vehicle you have for making me want to go to the movies is a movie trailer, and the only time I ever see the movie trailer is when I'm in the movies. It's kind of ass backwards. I said, give me the trailers, I'll put them on TV, but you got to put me on the list for those parties. And they did it, and when we polled people, what's your favorite channel? They go, I love ESPN, I love MTV, I love that trailer channel. I mean, we didn't even have a name for it. So when the company sold out, I was going, wait a second. I mean, MTV in its heyday, when it actually did music, would have a green screen behind the host, and the host would go, and Madonna has a new video. And I go, wait a second, I could take the movie trailer and stand up a host and go, and Schwarzenegger has a new movie. So the odd part about E, again, we started with very little money, is I would get the movie trailers, the best part of then a $50 million movie, for free. I would then build an audience around the trailer, and then I would go to the ad department of the studio, and I would actually have them pay to put their ads around the stuff they were giving me for free. It took them 3 years before they figured it out and said, hey, wait a second. Then we had to get the traditional, the Procter & Gamble's and, all of those folks there. So.
Great. Anything else you want to add that you wanted to make sure and get across before we close up?
No, I think, like I say, the stuff we're doing now, again, all has to have some, the U.S. stuff all has to have some social good component to it and stuff. And while we fund these things ourselves, we always like to bring in partners and stuff. And I think, a lot of family offices, there is heart there. And I think you guys, as their advisors, have to go a little bit beyond just ROI and tell people that you actually could be doing good with them. While the returns will be okay, you really start to think of doing something good with the money.
Great. Thank you, Larry. Appreciate you being here. Let's give him a round of applause.
Join the Family Office Club by visiting familyoffices.com. We look forward to seeing you at our next live event.